My sister punched me in the face, then dragged me by the hair through a ballroom filled with 70 people, all dressed in black tie, sipping champagne. Nobody stopped her. Not a single hand reached out. My mother. She stepped aside with her wine glass and smiled like Fallon had just won another award. I was wearing a white satin dress, sleeveless, a little too hopeful. Now it was torn at the shoulder, stained where I'd hit the floor. My lip was split open. My scalp was throbbing. My jaw felt like it had been hit with a brick. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood alone in the hotel bathroom, staring at my reflection under cold fluorescent light, and made one decision. This ends tonight. My name is Alyssa Grant. I'm 30. Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. 12 years of service. 4 deployments. I've been ambushed overseas, interrogated in training, and passed tests most people don't survive. But nothing prepared me for what my own family did to me. Fallon, no. Vanessa Grant, my sister, was being honored that night at the Grand Regency Ballroom in downtown Austin. Women in Tech Pioneer of the Year. The room looked like a magazine spread. Gold everything, candlelight, linen napkins folded like origami. Her face was on the event program. Her name was printed on champagne bottles. And I was an afterthought, scribbled in pen on the bottom corner of the invitation. Would be good PR if you came, Mom. I hadn't even planned to come back to Texas. I'd just gotten home from Hawaii, off deployment, running on 0 sleep and still wired from the last 6 months. But that card, that handwritten note in the corner, some part of me too stubborn or too stupid still believed maybe they'd treat me like I mattered. Maybe, just once. They'd be proud of me too. So I flew in. I didn't stop by home. I didn't want to. I Ubered straight to the venue, slipped in through the side door, heels quiet, head down. Nobody looked up. No one waved. I spotted Fallon Vanessa in the center of the room, surrounded by men in suits, women in cocktail dresses, reporters. She looked like she owned the place. Black silk gown, perfect hair, that laugh she does when she knows she's being watched. I didn't expect a red carpet, but I didn't expect to feel invisible either. I walked to the gift table and placed a single frame I'd spent hours restoring. It was a photo of the 2 of us sisters, before she turned my service into her brand. Then I heard the click of her heels behind me. Wow, she said, voice low but pointed. Didn't think you'd show. Didn't think I was supposed to. I answered without turning. She walked up beside me, eyes scanning the gift I'd brought. Mom thought it'd look good, she said. The family values angle. She picked up the frame, glanced at it like it was a grocery receipt, then set it down. Try not to make a scene, Alyssa. We both know you have a history. I turned to her. A history of what I asked. Being quieter than you liked. Not clapping hard enough when you got your first check. Her smile cracked. Just slightly. You always had that jealous streak, she said, stepping in closer. Still pathetic. I didn't blink. I didn't join the Marines to be better than you. I joined to get away from you. And that's when she snapped. 1 second, we were standing there like 2 sisters at a fundraiser. The next, her hand flew across my face. The sound echoed louder than the applause from 10 minutes earlier. My head turned with the force of it. My mouth filled with blood. Before I could react, she grabbed my hair, hard, and yanked. I stumbled, caught myself, stumbled again. She was dragging me, heels clicking, chin up like I was something she needed to throw away. People gasped. A few whispered. One woman even laughed. And my mother, Cynthia Grant, polished, pearl-clad, always rehearsed, just stood there and moved aside. Didn't say a word. Didn't ask a single question. She started it, Vanessa muttered, still gripping my hair like a leash. No one stopped her. She shoved me through the ballroom doors into the hallway. Let go, smoothed her dress. "I told you not to make a scene," she hissed, then turned and walked back into the applause. And I stood there, stunned, humiliated, not broken, not yet. I pushed open the door to the women's restroom, hands shaking, and stared at myself in the mirror. Hair stuck to my face, lips split, eyes burning. This wasn't a family moment. This was a declaration. I wasn't one of them. Not really. Not ever. They wanted me gone, erased, disposable. But I've survived worse than shame, worse than silence. And Fallon Vanessa just made a mistake. Because I'm not the type you leave alive in the wreckage. I pulled out my phone, paused. Not my mom, not my CO, not anyone who'd try to fix this quietly. I hovered over one contact, Eric Matthews, First Lieutenant, Legal Support, Camp Pendleton, steady voice, moral compass made of steel. I tapped call. It rang once, then again. And when he picked up, I didn't say hello, didn't ask how he'd been. All I said was, "I need help." Eric didn't ask if I was okay. He never does. That's why I trust him. He just said, "Where are you?" I told him. He paused. "I'll be there in 20. While I waited, I crossed the street to the diner, sat in the back booth, hoodie pulled over my head, ribs aching, cheek pulsing. The waitress asked if I wanted anything. I just shook my head. Outside, the chandelier inside that ballroom kept glittering, reflecting the same people who clapped for Fallon, then stood still while she assaulted me. I couldn't stop replaying it. Not the hit, the silence, the approval, the way nobody even flinched. When Eric walked in, he didn't waste time. He spotted me immediately, nodded once, then sat down across from me. Eyes calm but alert. He didn't ask what happened. He just said, "What do you need?" That cracked something in me. I told him everything, not just about the party, about Fallon Vanessa, how she'd been erasing me little by little for years. At first it was small stuff, skipping my name in family bios, downplaying my deployments as extended leave. But then came the bombshell. A few weeks ago, I got a letter from a credit union I didn't recognize. Something about missed payments on a loan I never took. I thought it was a scam, until I looked closer. They had my name, my social, my military credentials. I called the number. They said a $180,000 business loan had been opened 10 months ago under my name, co-signed by an LLC registered to Vanessa Grant. Eric leaned forward, voice low. "You have proof." I nodded. At my apartment. Paperwork. A few emails she forwarded by mistake. She listed me as co-founder on her startup's grant applications, said I was the veteran backbone of her company. I've never touched a single damn thing in that business. Eric didn't flinch. First, we get that documentation. Then we bring in someone who can trace where your info went and what she's done with it. "I don't want a quiet settlement," I said. "I don't want her to write a blog post and call it even." "I know," he said. "You want exposure." "Full. Then I know exactly who we're calling." He pulled out his phone and typed something fast, then looked back at me. "Julian Ricks, ex-IRS investigator, tracks fraud like a bloodhound. We worked together on a JAG case in Okinawa 2 years ago. If Fallon used your military record to get money, grants, or investors, he'll find every trace." I breathed in, slow, pressed the ice pack he'd brought against my jaw. "You sure about this?" Eric asked. I looked up. She used my name, my identity, my rank, and then she hit me with the same hand she used to sign fake documents. "Yeah, I'm sure." He gave me that dry half smile he always had back in training. Good. Because she just started a war with a Marine, and I don't think she read the fine print. We drove through the quiet streets of Aurora, Colorado. Eric's truck smelled like coffee and pine air freshener. Every bump in the road made my ribs scream. But inside, something was settling. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was focused. Julian lived in a cookie-cutter suburb beige house. Red door. Like something from a home insurance brochure. Didn't look like a guy who tracked embezzlers for fun. But then the porch light flipped on. And the front door opened before we even knocked. He stood barefoot, holding a coffee mug with a cracked handle, wearing a t-shirt that said "Death by Audit." "You must be Alyssa," he said, eyes sharp. "Come in, I've already pulled your records." I stopped mid-step. "You what?"
"Eric texted me your full name and DOB 20 minutes ago. I ran a basic scan. You've got 3 open credit accounts tied to military finance. 2 are standard. The third is fishy as hell."
We followed him into his kitchen. Laptop open, covered in stickers that said things like, "My spreadsheet can beat up your startup." He clicked through files faster than I could read. Bank records, loan apps, email metadata. "Tell me what you know," he said. So I laid it out clean. How Fallon asked for my DD-214 during my last deployment. Said Mom needed it for insurance updates. I was overseas. Busy. Didn't think twice. Sent it. She had what she needed. Julian clicked again. "Look here. Loan application filed 10 months ago. Your name. Your social. Your rank. Recipient account. Vanessa Grant. Doing business as Civixa Labs." He spun the screen around. There it was. A document with my information and a digital signature that looked close, but wrong. "She forged it," Julian said. "Sloppy job, timestamps don't match, stylus rhythms off, amateur." "She's not that dumb," I muttered. "She had help." She did. Someone at the financial institution looked the other way. Could have been bribed or blackmailed, but they left footprints. Eric crossed his arms. "So, what's next?" Julian looked at me. "You need to secure your military files. File a fraud alert with the VA. Once flagged, she can't touch your records again." "Can she go to jail for this?" He shrugged. "Wire fraud, yes. Identity theft tied to federal military status. Definitely. But the real question is, do I want this to be criminal or civil?" I finished. He nodded. I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen, at my name hijacked, bent into some startup fairy tale. Fallon Vanessa didn't just lie. She sold me as a feature. She used my sacrifice as branding. "She thinks no one will believe me," I said. "She thinks if she spins this right, I'll just look dramatic, angry, jealous, like the unstable little sister." Julian looked at me hard. "She's banking on your silence," he said. "She's betting wrong," I replied. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of Eric's dining room in sweatpants and a hoodie, surrounded by open folders, printouts, sticky notes, every piece of evidence we could find. It felt like basic training all over again. Only this time, I wasn't prepping for combat overseas. I was prepping for war at home. Eric had cleared the table. He'd turned it into a makeshift command post. Julian was on speaker, pacing somewhere in his basement, voice low and clipped. We weren't just gathering proof. We were documenting a pattern, a trail. Fallon hadn't made a one-time mistake. She'd built an empire on top of my name. Julian pulled up another file. "You need to see this." He screen-shared a spreadsheet so detailed it looked like an IRS exhibit. Colored rows, account IDs, transfer amounts. "She didn't just use your ID to apply for the loan," he said. "She used it as collateral proof of military affiliation to get grants, awards, access to events, speaking gigs." Then he dropped the real bomb. "There's a pitch deck public, downloadable, where she literally puts your deployment photo next to her mission statement, under the headline, 'Built by Women, Backed by Marines.'" I blinked. "She sold me as a co-founder." "Worse," Julian said. "She commodified your service." Eric cursed under his breath. "This is more than fraud. It's stolen valor." I stood up, walked to the window, hands shaking. I remembered that photo me, in dusty camis, squinting under a desert sun, holding a care package from home. Fallon had sent it. Snacks. A short note. No phone call. Back then, I thought maybe she cared. Now I realized she'd been gathering materials for her brand. We spent the next 12 hours building the case. Julian dug into financials. Eric reviewed legal avenues. I compiled every memory I could, every email, every favor Fallon asked for over the years that didn't feel right at the time, but now made sickening sense. There weren't that many. We weren't close. But the ones that existed each was deliberate. Targeted. Julian called again, just after midnight. I traced the third account, the one tied to your credentials. It's routed through a fintech company in Utah that specializes in veteran-owned business funding. And Eric asked, "There's a shell company registered to Vanessa. The EIN was filed using your mom's address. The payout structure shows 3 staged vendor contracts, all fake, all leading back to her." "She's laundering it," I muttered. "Through herself." Julian confirmed. "This is classic, small scale, under the radar, but devastating if exposed." He clicked into another folder. There's more. She submitted 5 different applications for veteran-only business grants. All of them cite her as co-founder and list you as military verification. I sat down hard. She's not just using my service. She's impersonating it. Eric added quietly, "And she's doing it in public." At sunrise, I got an email from Julian titled Fallon Stage 1. Inside 6 legal templates. Whistleblower affidavit. VA fraud alert request. Federal identity theft notification. All pre-filled. All ready for me to sign. Eric handed me a pen. Didn't say a word. He didn't have to. I signed each page like I was marking a target. This wasn't just about Fallon anymore. It wasn't about jealousy or sibling rivalry. It was about principle. She stole something sacred, not just my name, but what that name stood for. When I served, I didn't post selfies. I didn't hashtag my deployments. I didn't wear the uniform to be inspirational. And she wrapped herself in it like a costume. Later that morning, we reached out to Clara Price, Fallon's former COO, the one who left quietly 6 months ago. No public resignation, no LinkedIn farewell. Just vanished from Fallon's press kit overnight. We messaged her anonymously. She replied within 20 minutes. "Meet in person. I don't talk online about that woman." We met Clara at a cafe halfway between Boulder and Denver. She looked tired. No makeup. Denim jacket. Hands wrapped around a chipped mug like it was keeping her grounded. The second she saw me, she froze. "You're the sister." "Unfortunately," I said, sliding into the booth. "We need to talk." I told her everything. Clara didn't interrupt, just stared at the table, nodding slowly. "She used your face in 2 different pitch decks," Clara finally said. "In one of them, she called you her combat inspiration, said she built Civixa while writing letters to you in active war zones." I almost laughed. She barely answered my texts. Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. "This has every email I saved before I left. Internal documents, press kit edits, contracts, even a draft of her keynote where she says your dad was a Navy SEAL." "Our dad sold insurance," I said flatly. Clara didn't blink. She told investors the startup was built on discipline, sacrifice, and battlefield insight. Eric's voice turned cold. "She built her brand on lies. And your service." Clara leaned in. "You want to take her down?" "I want her off my name." "Then you'll need more than receipts. You'll need a witness. Someone who can say, under oath, 'I was there.'" "I don't want revenge," I told her. "I want reckoning." Clara nodded. "I'll sign whatever you need. But I'm not running PR for her fallout." "You won't have to," I said. Back at Eric's, we scanned the flash drive. Julian cross-referenced the names in the email threads. And then the final piece fell into place. There was a slide in the deck labeled, "From Deployment to Disruption." a photoshopped image of Fallon in military fatigues, standing beside me at my basic training graduation. My face, my moment, her uniform, her smile. She stole it all. I saved the image and whispered to no one in particular, "Game on." The first thing I did was buy a domain name. Truth. In uniform, org. It cost me $9 and gave me something Fallon would never control: my own platform. No PR firm, no filters, no branding, just facts. I didn't need it to look pretty. I needed it to be undeniable. Black text, white background, one sentence at the top. This is what it looks like when your own sister steals your service and calls it empowerment. Underneath, I posted everything: Fallon's forged loan application, screenshots of her grant submissions using my military ID, the doctored keynote photo, Clara's email threads, and a side-by-side of my real deployment records next to her fabricated timeline. At the very bottom, I added a contact form. If she used you too, speak up. I hit publish. It went live at 1:17 p.m. By 1:35, it had over 3,000 views. By midnight, it was trending on Reddit under the thread tech founder fakes military ties for clout. Fallon didn't respond directly, not at first, but hours later, she posted a black Instagram story with white text: "Jealousy is loud. Truth is quiet." The song Survivor played faintly in the background, subtle as a car crash. Julian called immediately. "She's in damage control mode." Eric read the caption twice and rolled his eyes. "She's trying to reframe you as the aggressor. Classic PR spin. Make herself the target." "She doesn't get to rewrite this," I said. "Not anymore." The next morning, we got a cease and desist letter from Fallon's lawyer. Accused me of defamation, harassment, and unauthorized use of proprietary brand content. Eric read it, sighed, and fired off a 3-line response. "We are happy to comply once your client retracts all false military claims, returns all funds fraudulently obtained, and publicly corrects her record. Until then, buckle up." I wanted to frame that email, but Fallon wasn't done. 2 days later, she dropped a full-blown video on YouTube. Title: My Truth. 8 minutes long, soft piano music, gray turtleneck, loose waves. She looked straight into the camera, eyes glassy with prepackaged emotion. "I've always believed in women supporting women," she said, voice trembling just enough. "That includes my sister Alyssa, who's had difficulty adjusting to life after service. It breaks my heart to see her lashing out during a difficult time. I love her deeply. I hope she gets the help she needs." I stared at the screen. Then I laughed, sharp and bitter. "She's framing you as unstable," Eric said quietly, trying to turn the focus from what she did to how you're reacting. Even the piano music felt manipulative. "She's turning a federal crime into a Lifetime movie," I muttered. Julian shook his head. "We respond with receipts, no drama, just truth." So we posted everything. Scanned PDFs, time-stamped files, VA record flags, the doctored photos, and, just for good measure, a clip from my promotion ceremony, me in full uniform, Fallon in the crowd checking her phone the entire time. That video hit 100,000 views in less than 2 hours. But the real shift came next. Women started reaching out. Veterans, tech workers, former colleagues. One of them, named Brianna, wrote, "Fallon pitched me on launching a female veterans-only coding boot camp. I gave her my entire curriculum outline. Then she ghosted me and launched her own version 2 months later." Another said she shared a nonprofit's donor list with Fallon for collaboration. 2 weeks later, Fallon cold emailed those donors without permission for her own startup. She wasn't just using me. She'd been using all of us. I asked if they'd be willing to go on record. Every single one said yes. We added a submission section to the site. Within 24 hours, we had 15 detailed testimonies. 2 were anonymous. 1 came from a former Army intelligence officer. They told the same story. Fallon built her success on borrowed trauma. Not just mine, theirs. Eric read the latest one and let out a low whistle. She's not just toast, she's a bonfire. Julian sent over another file. Subject: Fallon's real resume. Inside, he'd pulled her actual employment history from public databases. No Department of Defense consulting, no veteran advocacy internship, just retail work, followed by marketing internships. Then the sudden appearance of her startup with military-aligned founder values. He'd also found something more alarming. She listed you as a strategic advisor on 3 grant forms, he told me, and submitted a PowerPoint that includes a signature block forged with your name and rank. She didn't just steal my image. I said, she manufactured an entire identity, a version of me that was easier to sell. She never wanted your story, Clara said. She wanted your silhouette. I booked a hotel room under an alias near Colorado Springs. Clean, quiet, off radar, no press, no family. From there, I monitored the website traffic. Reddit was lit up. Veteran forums started sharing it. People dug through Fallon's speeches, her media interviews, and realized none of it added up. One guy even color-coded her pitch decks like they were part of a congressional investigation. Then I got an email from Elise Cho, independent journalist, former war correspondent. She didn't do fluff. Subject line: we need to talk, off the record. We jumped on a secure video call. I followed Vanessa Grant for a while, she said, and it never smelled right. Too clean, too polished, not enough fingerprints. You found your fingerprints, I said. She nodded. I want to write this. A long-form exposé. Not just about Fallon, but about what happens when a woman builds power on someone else's sacrifice. What do you need? Access, interviews, full documentation, your voice. I hesitated. I don't want a revenge piece. I want a reckoning. She smiled. That's exactly what I write. I gave her everything. Signed off on the source clearance, shared Brianna's testimony, Clara's emails, my own documents. She promised to verify every fact, and she did. 3 days later, the article dropped. Title: The Sister She Erased Inside Fallon Grant's Stolen Valor Empire. It was brutal, meticulous, unignorable. Fallon's publicist issued a weak statement. We are reviewing the allegations. Too late. The tech conference dropped her from the keynote lineup. Her lead investor issued a refund request. A former intern posted on LinkedIn. She kept a pair of dog tags in her office. When I asked why, she said, marketing. I quit the next day. Fallon didn't respond. For the first time, she was quiet. No turtleneck, no soft piano, no version of her truth. She was bleeding credibility by the second. And I hadn't even walked into a courtroom yet. Fallon's legal team tried to delay the hearing twice. They filed motions, cried defamation, claimed mental health duress, asked the judge to consider the complex emotional layers of sibling rivalry. But the judge wasn't buying it. The court date was set. Thursday, 10 a.m., federal court in Denver. I wore my dress uniform. It wasn't for show. It was a reminder to them, to me, of where this all began. Not in startups, not in scandal, but in service. Eric walked beside me, calm and solid. Julian was already inside, prepping documents. Clara sat 2 rows behind me, holding a yellow notepad in her breath. Fallon arrived 10 minutes late. Designer trench coat, dark sunglasses, 4-inch heels. Her team flanked her like bodyguards. None of them made eye contact. She didn't look like someone fighting for the truth. She looked like someone performing strength. The case was technically civil fraud, identity misuse, intentional misrepresentation for financial gain. But the evidence we had, it was enough to catch the attention of the U.S. Attorney's Office. The courtroom wasn't packed, but it felt full. 2 journalists sat in the back, A young veteran I didn't know nodded at me with quiet respect. Then the judge called my name. I walked up, steady, right hand raised, swore to tell the truth. Eric asked the questions calmly, clearly. Ms. Ward, can you confirm your years of service? Yes. I enlisted in 2007. I was honorably discharged in 2019 after serving 12 years, including deployments to Kandahar and Baghdad. Did your sister, Fallon Grant, ever serve? No. Did she have access to your military records? Only what I shared personally. She didn't have clearance for the rest. He walked the court through the documents, one by one. The grant applications bearing my name, the fake signature, the manipulated keynote photo, a side-by-side of her resume versus verified government records. Then he played a video clip from a panel where Fallon spoke. As someone who's seen war up close, I know how it changes your spirit. Eric paused it. Does that voice sound familiar? I nodded. Too familiar. He leaned in. Ms. Ward, what do you call it when someone speaks pain they never lived, wears medals they never earned, and profits from a story they stole? I didn't flinch. I call it theft. Fallon's attorney tried to spin it. She was inspired by her sister. He argued. She sought to honor her family's sacrifices. He glanced toward me like I was supposed to smile. I didn't. They brought Fallon to the stand. She looked smaller up there. Not physically, just contained. She spoke in that same breathy voice from her My Truth video. I never meant harm, she said. I just wanted to build something meaningful, something that mattered. By pretending you were someone you weren't, Eric asked. She turned toward the judge. Look, the veteran community inspired me. I thought if I could just borrow some of that resilience. Borrow, Eric cut in. You borrowed the dog tags, the words, the uniform. She blinked. Then came the moment that cracked her. Eric pulled up the forged DoD letter, her supposed consulting contract. This letter, he said, was flagged by 3 federal agencies as counterfeit. Fallon didn't respond. Eric stepped closer. Tell the court who wrote this letter. Silence. Who signed this name? Ms. Grant. Still nothing. The judge finally leaned forward. Ms. Grant, you're under oath. Fallon opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, her silence said everything. It was over. Not officially, not yet. But the courtroom shifted. Even her lawyer looked down at the table. When the judge called recess, Fallon exited quickly. No sunglasses, no heels clicking proudly. She didn't look at me, just the floor. I stepped outside and felt something I hadn't in weeks: clean air. No weight on my chest, no noise in my head. Just space. Julian met me by the elevator. You cracked the wall, he said. Now the rest will collapse. That afternoon, Elise Cho published a follow-up. Title Truth in Uniform, the trial that exposed America's favorite feminist fraud. It was brutal and not sensational surgical. She quoted Fallon directly, matched her claims with hard facts. She ended with a line I'll never forget. This wasn't just about stolen valor. It was about how easily we reward performance over truth until truth fights back. By evening, 5 sponsors had pulled from Fallon's startup. The women she'd exploited began getting apology calls. VA advocacy groups issued statements. One even offered me a consulting role to help design new protocols against military misrepresentation. I didn't say yes, not yet. Because this wasn't over for me. Not until I said it out loud. My words, not in court, not in whispers. In my own name, I didn't plan the press conference. It was Clara's idea. You've already told the truth, she said. But now you need to own it. Out loud. On your terms. At first, I resisted. I didn't want cameras in my face or microphones in my hands. I didn't want to perform like Fallon did. But I realized this wasn't about me anymore. This was for every woman in uniform who had been erased by someone else's costume. This was for the truth that had been traded for applause. So I said yes. The VA hosted it. A small room, American flag, podium with a seal, about 40 chairs, 2 rows of lights, and a live stream feed that quietly hit 300,000 views. I didn't wear my medals. I didn't need them. Just a navy blue blazer, my dog tags tucked beneath the collar. I stepped up to the mic. My hands weren't shaking. I never thought I'd have to stand here and explain that I exist. I began. A few reporters looked up. I served my country not for likes, not for money, not for brand deals, but because I believed in something bigger than myself. I paused. And for the last 5 years, that belief was manipulated by someone who claimed to love me. My voice didn't crack, not even once. I didn't name Fallon. She'd already disappeared from public view. Her accounts were deactivated. Her startup's homepage now showed a 404 error. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just erasure, the same weapon she once used on me. But I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't hiding anymore. I closed the speech with something I'd written the night before. Real strength doesn't look like a perfectly lit video. It doesn't dress itself in other people's stories. It looks like getting up after being flattened. It looks like telling the truth when silence would be easier. It looks like service without spectacle. People clapped. But that wasn't the moment that stayed with me. It was afterward. A young woman in the back of the room, maybe mid-20s, olive drab shirt, short haircut, approached me quietly. She held out her hand. "Thanks for making space," she said, "for the rest of us." In the weeks that followed, my inbox overflowed. Not with brand offers, with letters from women who'd been silenced, from veterans whose stories were taken, from whistleblowers afraid to speak. I read every single one, and one night, sitting on the floor of my living room, I realized this wasn't just about what Fallon did to me. It was about what we let happen when we prioritize charisma over character, narratives over nuance. So I started writing back. Not as a victim, not as a soldier. As Alyssa Ward, a woman who stopped whispering and started reclaiming her voice. I wish I could tell you it all wrapped up perfectly. That justice meant closure, or that the courtroom verdict made everything right. But life isn't a headline, and truth doesn't move in straight lines. Fallon vanished from public life. No apology, no explanation, just absence. Her startup dissolved overnight. Her name quietly scrubbed from panels and press releases. In the end, her silence was the only confession she'd ever give. My mother called once, her voice brittle as dry grass. She didn't ask how I was. She wanted to know if the family would ever recover from the embarrassment. I told her, honestly, that I didn't know, that maybe the only way forward was to finally tell the truth, even if it was messy. She hung up. We haven't spoken since. But as the noise faded, something else took its place. Peace, maybe. Or just space to breathe. A sense that I no longer owed anyone a performance. Not my family, not the world, not even the version of myself I used to chase. I started teaching again at a community college. Nothing glamorous. Criminal justice, ethics, the real-life consequences of small lies. One of my students, a woman just out of the Navy, stayed after class every week. She asked questions that no textbook could answer. How do you keep telling the truth when nobody wants to hear it? I told her what I learned the hard way. You tell it anyway. You tell it for yourself, not for applause. You tell it because it's the only way the world gets better, even if it's just by an inch. The old photo of Fallon and me taken years before all this. 2 girls squinting at the sun sits in a drawer now. I don't look at it much. I don't need reminders. But every now and then, I find myself thinking about the woman I could have become if I'd let silence win. The one who never fought back, never spoke up, never reclaimed her story. That woman doesn't exist. Instead, there's just me, flawed, stubborn, and finally unafraid.
I know I'm not the only one.
There are so many people out there whose stories have been twisted or used by others, whose truths have been drowned out by bigger voices. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you've been made invisible in your own life. Or maybe you've carried someone else's story because it was easier than carrying your own. Maybe, like me, you've wondered if speaking up was worth the fallout.
Let me tell you it is.
Because even if it costs you comfort, or connection, or the version of family you thought you wanted, truth is the only thing that's really yours. And sometimes, telling it isn't about winning. It's about finally being able to breathe. If my story means anything, let it be this. Don't let anyone sell your struggle as their badge. Don't let anyone wrap themselves in your scars while you hide in the shadows. You don't have to turn your pain into a performance, but you never have to let it be erased. Sometimes strength is quiet. Sometimes it looks like standing up alone in a room full of silence. Sometimes it looks like writing your own ending, even if it's still unfinished. So, if you've watched this far, if you're still here, still listening, thank you. Maybe you're ready to share your own truth. Or maybe you just needed to know you're not alone.
If you want to support stories like this, hit subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments.
Or send your own story, because every truth spoken out loud makes it that much harder for the next lie to take root. We don't always get justice, but we always get the last word.
And that sometimes is enough.